wherever you are, welcome. However, you found this moment, I'm glad you did. I'm Dave, and this is Dave's Head, where perspective matters and clarity sets the tone. Let's get into it. What's in my head? So, first thing is, this concept of leadership and character and public conduct, right? We used to, it seems like decades ago, have this notion that are leaders, that they had character, that they conducted themselves a certain way in public. And that just doesn't exist anymore. Robert Mueller passed away a couple days ago. He was a former FBI director and special counsel. He's widely respected for leading the investigation into the Russian interference in the 2016 election. His career is one that represented discipline, service, institutional integrity. He's former military. I believe he served. I believe he got a gold star. I think. Um, but he passed away. I think he had a battle with some terminal illness. I want to say Parkinson's, but I could have that wrong. A good percentage of people honored his life and legacy. Um, Multiple former presidents released statements of condolences and respect, and just had the character and showed the leadership and put out a public message that was reflective of the role that they served and the role they still serve as former presidents. And then there's the truth. And I use quotes when I talk about truth, quote unquote truth, social posts by this president we have now, which, and I'm not going to put it on the screen, I'm not going to read the quote, but essentially it said he was glad he was dead. And he was glad because he couldn't hurt people anymore or something like that. And that highlights an ongoing issue we have with this current president's administration, where we lowered the bar so much, so ridiculously low, for what we consider respectable leadership conduct. And a couple weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago now, there was a post on quote unquote truth social that depicted President Obama in an unflattering and disrespectful way. Um, and we were told then that a staffer had posted that on Truth Social that, this president had nothing to do with it, didn't know about it. And then a couple of days later, on a different topic, the press secretary comes out her mouth and says, if it's on Truth Social, it came from the president. As if we didn't just hear you say that a couple days before. And so I take her word for it that all the history of this quote unquote Truth Social, that it's this current president who's posting those things. You want to come out your mouth and say that if it comes from the president and on Truth Social, it's coming from the president, then we're going to take your word for it. And based on everything historically that's been said disrespectfully, uncouthly, if that's a word, by this president, I would 100% believe that the post about Robert Mueller would have come directly from his Twitter fingers, rage texting, all that stuff. But we've lowered the bar so low. It's we don't even get surprised at the ignorance and the unintelligible manner in which he speaks, or that he sounds like he's either demented or drunk or a combination of the two most of the time. We've lowered the bar so much we don't really care. It's like, okay, what has this clown show, figuratively and really, done now. We haven't talked much about Charlie Kirk, but when he passed away, there were some, very, very few, who outright celebrated his death because of the character of the man he was and the things he said. They took offense to. There were people who were actually fired for posting on social media about his death. He's being memorialized as if he was some founding father or great person. In my opinion, he was neither. And this fairy tale or wise tale or whatever is going on to try to reshape and re-narrate things he said and who he was and what he represented would be comical if the whitewashing of history is not taking place, the rewriting of history is not taking place. I think a couple of days ago, over the weekend, a statue of Christopher Columbus appeared on the White House property, or grounds, as they say. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of Christopher Columbus. He never actually landed here, but from what I was told in history, I believe his name was Americus Vespucius or something like that. Is actually the one who landed here, but he's not celebrated. But leadership is example. There was a time in my lifetime when public office demanded a level of dignity that set an example for younger generations. You used to look to the president of the United States and say to your son or your daughter, because even still, we have not had a female or woman president, but that aspiration was communicated in the form of, look at this person. This is how you should act. This is how you should carry yourself. This is the level of respect you should command and also give. We don't have that expectation at all for this president. Nor would any of my godchildren hear the words from me, you want to be like him. Almost literally, the last person on earth you should want to be like, to me, is this president. And certainly not as a role model. There are very few redeeming qualities. The only one that people can probably point and tip their hat to is money, which we know paper can say one thing and reality can say another. If you want a role model or grifter, you got a great example for that. But not every person in power should be a role model anyway. I mean, Charles Barkley famously or infamously characterized himself as not being a role model. Now, I think when you have prominence and positions, you should carry yourself a certain way because there are a lot of eyes on you. There are people, whether you want them to or not, who look to you not only for guidance on how to behave and how to live, but they look to you as a role model. The purest and truest definition of that phrase, role model. But absolutely, there are people out there who should not be characterized as that is all. And this president's one of them. The lack of class, the lack of couth, the lack of respect, the fear mongering, the demonizing, the tantrums and name calling, all the things that are beneath the role and honor of the office of the presidency. That's who he is. Role model he is not. Leadership should be defined by integrity, intelligence, compassion, respect, both given and received, wanting to do better for people who voted for you to be in that position and those who did not vote for you. Not hating on states, not hating on cities, not hating on a populace of people simply because you want to demonize them or rob them of their right to vote. That's not what a leader is. That's not what a role model is. Now, you contrast this with President Barack Obama. Only those who have an agenda or simply hate him because of whatever reason, external, internal, whatever. President Obama represents a model of composure, intelligence, respect, dignity, class. And by extension and connection, also Michelle Obama, the First Lady. famously said, when they go low, we go high. And there are people who are tired of even that mindset. Trust me. There are people who want to go lower when they go low. And I get it. Completely understand it. But the standard for a president is not this current one. Absolutely not. The standard, I think a lot of people say, is Barack Obama. People hated him from the moment he was elected, vowed to not let anything he did or wanted to do pass. Literally sat in a restaurant the night of inauguration and plotted and planned from day one. And he still was a successful president, still saved the automotive industry, crawled us out of the Great Depression or regression or whatever it's called, great something. We have a number of years left with this president. We desperately need better next go round. We cannot continue with this type of person or these type of people being leaders in our government. I don't know if that's Gavin Newsom. I don't know if that's who. Someone better, and I don't mean better do, someone who is better, needs to step to the forefront and show people what true, respectable leadership looks like. Want more clarity, perspective, and real conversation? Tune in to Dave's Head Podcast. Every episode delivers insight, conversation, and stories that make you think, and maybe even smile a little. Whether YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Alive Podcast Network, or your preferred source, subscribe, follow, tune in, and share with anyone who needs to hear it. Don't you miss a single episode. Your next great conversation starts in Dave's head. The next thing and last thing in my mind are career crossroads, changing direction, closing a chapter, opening a new one. After nearly a decade, my professional journey has come to a crossroads, a fork in the road, if you will. A transition point as I leave the organization that I was a part of and step into what's next. I'm fortunate to be able to take time to not jump into something else, but to think about the path I want to take. I have many passions. Data, obviously, is one of them. Science, technology is obviously a set of them. Photography, marketing, creativity, traveling. I love to travel. And so thinking about all these different things that could be in my future. And listen, I'm no spring chicken. I approach the age of 50 in the next year plus. And so in my mind, and hopefully in reality, I'm looking at, another 10, 15 tops, but hopefully 10 years before I retire. And so what do I want to make of those 10, 15 tops years? Fortunately, I have the freedom to reflect. I have the ability to step back and evaluate the next move and create the opportunity or build on what I currently sit on and create the opportunity to align my life with intentionality. No urgency. The decision to me is not just about income. Income is great. Money to spend is great. Money to save is great. Money to retire with is great. But there's more than one way to skin a cat. It's about fulfillment, flexibility, creativity, long-term impact, legacy. Hoping to start a family in the not so distant future. What is my legacy going to be? What passions will I show? For the longest time, decades upon decades, what's guided me in a lot of situations, a lot of changes, a lot of direction decisions is my instinct. It's wrong occasionally. but it's right an overwhelming amount of time. And so logic planning matters. Absolutely. I'm a Capricorn. We're going to do that. But trusting my gut based on years of experience has in the past led to my most authentic self, my most authentic decisions, and a very rewarding path. And so there are options. There are things I've started in motion already, although somewhat stalled because of competing priorities right now. But how I move forward in the next chapter, and ultimately how we move forward through the next chapter, is interesting. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to writing the words on the pages of the next chapter. The prior chapter is closed. Finite. Done. I'm thankful for the lessons. I'm thankful for the partnerships and relationships and all those things that were formed, but that chapter is closed. And so now what lies ahead is something brand new, shiny, and exciting. And what that is remains to be written. That's what's in my head. So, America and the world are at a crossroads with so many crises, from social unrest to geopolitical uncertainty. The call for a transformation of consciousness has never been louder. But what exactly needs to change? Always a question, right? What do we do? And how do we as individuals and a nation achieve it? Alan, known as the Paraclete, explores these questions in his book, The Modern Citizen, which you can find on Amazon, where he examines the spiritual evolution of humanity, the responsibilities of leadership, and the actions we must take to transform ourselves, our country, and the world. Kind of important, not just our local communities, but be transformative outside of our communities. So, Alan, aka the Paraclete, challenges the status quo with clarity and conviction, asking us to reclaim the adventurous spirit, unity, and moral vision that once defined America. Today, we'll explore practical steps for transformation, uncover what it means to live with purpose on the edge, and examine how each of us can contribute to a righteous nation guided by love and wisdom. Two things that seem very few and far between these days. Welcome to Dave Said Allen, aka the Paraclete. How's it going?
Thank you for inviting me to your head and sharing some thoughts and ideas with you.
No, absolutely happy to have you here and talk about some things that are prevalent and on everybody's mind, it seems like, in one way or another these days. To answer your question, I'm doing great. The sun is shining. Spring seems to be almost here in the Northeast.
Yeah.
I heard we're getting some cool weather next week, so maybe that's old man winter's last big blow, and then we'll get on to the 70s and 80s as a norm in society.
Nice. Yeah.
But I did a small intro, like I always do with my guests. But what I like to do is now ask you to take a moment and tell the people who you are, what you do, and what you're about.
Okay, I'm a regular American citizen. I work construction, and but there's always been something inside of me that's pushing me to understand humanity better, to understand myself better, and to see and understand and decipher what's going on in the world today, because it doesn't seem to me like we're going in the right direction. And I see that mirror in a lot of people, where it's just progressively getting worse. The situation, the wealth gap, the corruption, the violence, the separation of thoughts and ideas. So it's coming to a head. It's getting to a point where we got to start not only thinking about these things anymore, but start doing something to actually make a difference and make a change in the world. And I think the biggest change starts here in the United States of America, because we have been chosen. We were chosen a long time ago to lead humanity. Like a friend of mine told me the other day, the last beacon of hope of humanity is America, for the
Mm.
freedom, equality, and justice, and everything that we have done in the past and accomplished and gone through and suffered is has been a preparation for this particular point in time where we are today. And when we realize that, we understand that we have a bright future and a big responsibility towards the human race. It's not just about America becoming wealthier and more powerful, which is what we've been trying to do for I don't know how long. But we need to look back at the principles that
Mhm.
built this nation and understand that we have a huge responsibility towards ourselves and towards, the human race. That's where everything started. I love, history, American history, and, a lot of the spiritual ideas that surged when this nation was being built. Our founding fathers, excuse me, where they were practically deities. They believed themselves as the representatives of God upon the earth. They seriously believed this, and they showed
Mhm.
it in the symbols. So they were bringing about this new world, and we created it. And look how far we've come. And now we're being asked to reevaluate our position in the world and understand that we need to make some changes and some big sacrifices in order to make this transformation a reality.
So I obviously I have to ask, and before I ask my question that was not planned, but just based on what you just said, it just popped in my head. I have to preface this by saying I've been a big critic of things that are going on in this country right now, but more so in for a long time critical of legislative branch, the executive branch, the judicial branch, and how things are going on. Big proponent of term limits for senators and representatives because I
Right,
feel like we're stuck in this rut of there is this elite class who continues to prosper and profit and get themselves reelected, and then there's us, right, who
right, right,
navigate the waters and the sharks and all these things just
right.
to live.
Well, the system was with the industrial revolution. That's when everything started to shift and change,
Hmm.
and the individuals that were in power back then, they fashioned the system to benefit them,
Hmm.
and it wasn't supposed to be that way. But we actually needed it at that time because there were a lot of they needed to organize a labor force. They needed to, it's a process that was difficult, but it needed to be done. But they created that system where they are going to benefit the most,
Hmm.
and it just kept going. We kept going with that system. Today, we're looking at a system where it's no longer working for the American people, for the majority of us, for 80% of us. It's not working properly. It's hard to get by every single day. So we need to restructure it. Just like our founding father said, you need to take a time once in a while and restructure your system if you need to.
Hmm.
And we are at that point. We are
Yeah.
at the point where the system needs to work for us as opposed to us being a slave to the system. And the problem is that people don't realize that in America, the changes come from below, from the masses, from us. If we expect the government or institutions to change by themselves and uh, uh, give up some of their power or wealth and spread it, to the nation, it's not going to happen. We got to demand it,
Yeah.
just like we demanded, civil rights and women's rights and labor laws and everything else has to come from us because that's the way this system is structured. So we need to get together and stop fighting between, Democrats and Republicans and realize they're all the same. And they're all looking out for their own, lobbyist friends or their own corporations and all the, the wealthy
Special
individuals.
interests and yeah.
Yeah. So we all know this,
Mhm.
that is going on. So are we gonna just keep talking about it, or are we gonna start organizing ourselves and doing something about it and making America better? Because it's not about us against them either. It's all of us.
Mhm.
We need to make this change together. Our politicians need to realize why they're there. They're there. It's public service. It's one of the most cherished and most respected careers you could have. I was watching a documentary the other day with Theodore Roosevelt, and he looked out for the people because that was his duty. He was doing his
Mhm.
duty for the American people, and nobody would budge that for. You're
Yeah.
not there. You're not there in government to get wealthy. You're not there to have more power. You're there to serve, and that's what they need to understand. And corporations also need to understand that their main purpose is not profit. Their main purpose is to make contributions to the society,
Mhm.
to help us solve some of the problems that we have, to help us with the education system, to help us with, violence and crime and all the problems that plague this nation. And some people are waking up, and some wealthy individuals are realizing this and are starting to donate even more of their profits, but it needs to be done in a large scale. I mean, to the
Yeah.
point where celebrities and uh, uh, athletes and business owners and sports team owners donating. These people make so much money in one
Mhm.
game. Help the people in your community more. The last time I saw, they donated, I think it was $1,000 for to like 5 teachers. They made this big announcement and this big thing about giving $1,000 to teach. Come on, pay off their house. You know,
Yeah.
that's how you give thanks to a business. Saying, you know, uh, thank you or come again or thank you for your business. It's not enough anymore. We need you to show us through your actions how much you care about your society, the people that support you. So our most cherished institutions and leaders need to understand this, and they need to realize that it's not about them only. It's about
Mhm.
the whole nation.
Yeah, I will say I agree with you 99% of what you just said. There's one piece that I disagree with you with.
Mhm.
I'll start with that. I think it should be public service, that is, should be the most respected duty that one can serve outside of, I'd say, probably military service.
Right.
Or, public service, I put that police, fire as well. I think it's no longer respected in regards to
No.
Congress, the Senate, judicial, executive branches, just because of the state that we're in. Um, I think if they truly were about for and by the people and doing what they can to help uplift people, I think their respect would be through the roof. I think
Yeah.
many cases we're a laughing stock a lot of times because of
Oh,
the
yeah.
things that we're doing in
Through
all three
throughout the
branches.
world, throughout the
Yeah.
world. And yeah, I agree, and they're very disconnected with society,
Hmm. Yeah.
and they're just bickering amongst each other to
Hmm.
determine who is right, and that's not the way this country is supposed to run. And then
Hmm.
you see in one party does one thing that, let's say, it's working during their term, and then the another party comes in and destroys it out of
Hmm.
spite. If the system is working right, leave it alone. Do
Yeah.
something else to better the nation. Don't be, destroying something that is helping people. So they are disconnected completely from
Hmm.
us, from the society, and we need to show them and guide them as a nation what we want done, what it is that we want, and we
Yes.
need to forcefully, if necessary, but
Mhm.
not violently.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of means that we could use to let our voices be heard and make the necessary changes that we all know what they are. You know,
Mhm.
so
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of every incumbent, evict them all. Every time someone's
yeah,
elected, if they've served office, get rid of them, get fresh blood in there, get fresh ideas. I think lifelong senators and representatives just shouldn't be a thing. And I'm a big
right.
proponent of
I,
term
I, I
limits,
I
all that stuff.
agree. I agree. I
I think
agree.
that's the
And
way we kind
yeah,
of get this motor restarted as far as serving the people.
Yeah, but you gotta realize also that a lot of the people that you replace them with are gonna be made from the same mold,
Hmm.
and they're gonna have the same ideas and the same type of and it just it's gonna be the same old system. It's just in a little different way,
Yeah.
and we need to just restructure at least the government first of all completely. And
Hmm.
as far as I've been able to understand from a lot of economists and historians and people that you know talk about government, even we can say government is not a solution. Government is the problem.
Hmm.
So government and a lot of economists will tell you have created, most of the economic problems in the United States, most of the global, wars and the destabilization of countries, and
Right. We're living through one
they
right now.
create most of the problems. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know we need to shrink the government. The government needs, as far as I'm concerned, government should be to defend the nation, you know, and to set the rules, to be the referee, so
Hmm.
that big corporations and pharmaceuticals and hospitals and food industry are not taking advantage of us and poisoning us like they're doing right now because of the profits. So the government is supposed to protect the public,
Hmm.
and in every way. So that's the role. Everything else should be left over to state governments and corporations. And a lot of economists say the same thing. And a lot of people that think about, take the time to think about this, it's like the same. They are a problem. Once they took over, the finances of the country, it just destroyed it.
Hmm.
The school system, is doing terrible. So it's just a matter of we need to restructure, and we need to get fresh ideas, a fresh uh, uh, perspective,
Hmm.
and try some of the different programs that I think we should implement,
And that
starting
that
with yeah. Go ahead.
yeah. No, I was gonna say that kind of tails into the question I've queued up in my head. I was holding on to, and it's kind of two part. It's our biggest change. What's our biggest change that we need to make, and why isn't it a change to how we do business, or i.e., capitalism in this
Well,
country?
yeah, the biggest change that we need to make is integrity. We need to have some integrity. We got to eliminate corruption. We can't be doing this. There's plenty of money for everything. You
Hmm.
telling me that there's not enough money to put a police officer in every single door of every school, to have snipers around the schools so our kids can go to school and be safe? Are you telling me there's not enough money for that, but there's enough money to go, bomb other nations, or, spend it on things that are unnecessary? So it's a matter of having some dignity, man, and
Hmm.
some self-righteous, to be self-righteous and say, listen, uh, I can't do this. I can't be stealing from the people. This money doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the nation.
Yeah.
And if you want to see an example of what that would look like in today's world, you just have to go to El Salvador, and there you have a government that's working for the people, and you see the results. And you see how they eliminated corruption in the government. They took away everything from the judges and the politicians that were stealing. They took away their house, their cars, everything. Said this guy said, Bukele said, this doesn't belong to you. You stole it. Now give it back, or they took it back. They put them in jail.
Hmm.
It's very serious business, because you're hurting everybody. You're hurting a lot of people. So, and a lot of people don't like China very much, but you got to look at an example again. A nation
Hmm.
that in 40 years, 40 years ago, they were riding bicycles. Only 40 years ago, they didn't have cars; they had bicycles.
Wow.
And what do? They reinvest their money into their community, into their kids. into the road, into the infrastructure,
Mhm.
into the development of their nation. And that's why they grew so fast, so quick. They went through an industrial revolution in 40 years. It took the rest of the world over 100 years to go through that. And now it's, for a reason, because things were more automated now than before. Before we had to create all the machines and all the tools and everything else. Yeah, but they've done it right, and they fight corruption
Mhm.
very strongly. So I think we should look at other nations also to see the example that are working that are in other nations and implement them.
Yeah, one of the things I always say, and I've been, to other nations, been across the pond, as they call it. Um, and I look at the Frances, the Germanys, the Italys, China, as you mentioned, and you look at infrastructure. Just take infrastructure by itself and look at how it's implemented, how it's upkept, the investments in it, as you talked about, and then you contrast that to, we've had infrastructure bills. I can't, I've lost count of how many infrastructure bills we've had in the last 20 years, or at least some legislation geared towards infrastructure. And it seems like we still lag behind in the very simple things like getting around the nation. There other countries have
Yeah,
trains that can get you from here to Chicago in an hour, but we
yeah,
can't seem to, keep potholes out of roads, right?
yeah.
Um, and I come back to this again, and I've said before on prior episodes with different people on that, to me, capitalism is the root of all the issues in this country, and not just business capitalism, but capitalism with people, as you said, trying to acquire more power, more wealth, more positions, all this stuff. And so, thinking about change and what it honestly will take to right this ship of America, why are people so either hesitant, afraid, not willing, complacent? I mean, you could throw so many descriptions out there. Why are people those things when it comes to the change that are necessary to make their own lives better?
We are scared as a nation. And, if you, I think we got really, really, really scared back when they shot Kennedy
Mm,
and the peace and love movement, and when they shot Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And well, we don't know, exactly who did it, but we all, have, there's a lot of conspiracy theories. So
mhm,
I think, the peace and love movement stopped. Everybody went to work, and we just said, we bowed our heads and said, it's over. And Kennedy had a beautiful vision for the nation. He wanted to make us a righteous nation again, and his brother as well. And I think we got scared, and what the government can do to us, powerful individuals. But there's there's something about human nature where the movement, it won't stop.
mhm,
So people rise up no matter what, because there's something in their psychological makeup that pushes them to go further, to see beyond, what we're doing to ourselves, and realize that we can do much better.
mhm,
And that's what pushes us as human beings. And you can't stop it. You can try, but it just w- we're not going to be happy until we do this. We're not going to be really
yeah,
happy and proud of ourselves where we can say, wow, America is back on the right track. We're respecting the decisions of our allies, which we don't do, and we're involving them in the things that we would like to do in the world. And for us to be on the right track, and start working together, and not just as a nation, but as a species,
yeah,
to conquer the universe, and to go beyond. All the money that we've wasted, all the talent, all the resources in wars is astonishing. It's more than, all the financing, or, health industry, everything. You put it together, and we spent more in military than in anything else. So when are we going to
mm,
realize that it just doesn't work anymore? People don't want it anymore. We don't want wars anymore. We don't
yeah,
want, if you have a country like, like in the Middle East, isolate them. You just keep them away from the rest of the world. We don't want to deal with you. You don't want to grow. You don't want to get better. You don't want to progress. You know, then you're gonna keep being the same as you've always been for the rest of your life and for all throughout, the history of humanity. You're just not gonna grow. And
Sure.
for us to help other nations develop, the ones that want to develop, we can help them develop. And one of the things that we can use to develop other nations is capitalism, and it's what China did was implement capitalism in a free capitalist economy,
Mhm.
and we can use that system to better the living conditions of other countries,
Yeah, I mean,
undeveloped nations.
I,
3 minutes lecturing.
yeah, I think with capitalism has to be done the right way, right? There's with all systems, all things, you can have people misuse things or take advantage of things to their own benefit. Um, but when it comes to other nations, I think part of the problem, and this is my own hypothesis, part of the problem with isolating nations is we're looking to get oil from them. We're looking to get gold from them, looking to get precious metals for circuit boards and microchips and things like that.
Mm,
So we're always looking for that financial or capitalistic advantage with these countries. Look at Venezuela and Iran, right? They're
yeah,
strategic initiatives. They're not, they're not bringing peace and happiness to the nations or the people that live in those nations. It's about controlling their oil, controlling their resources, i.e., capitalism. Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
but
agree. I agree, and it's what's holding humanity back.
mhm,
That desire for control and greed,
mhm.
and it's holding us back. And we need to realize that we need to make the changes. We need to break our dependency on oil.
Yep.
At least as a fuel, because we're going to need oil for plastics and road building and other things. But as far as burning gasoline, man, we're in the 21st century. I don't know what we're still doing.
Mhm,
And a lot of people are concerned, well, it's going to be a big impact on the economy. There's going to be, a lot of um, resistance from huge, huge corporations and very wealthy individuals that are going to fight their way not to, not for us not to break our dependency on gasoline. But it needs to happen no matter what. Now, you realize that when we were killing whales, and we stopped killing whales once we found oil.
mhm,
And now that we can create, or we might even have, an alternate fuel source for automobiles, let's go for it. And if you need to tax me a yearly fee, for the gasoline or all the people that are going to be laid off or all the problems, economic problems that will happen, a fuel tax every year, people spend about $3,000 a year. Well, tax me $3,000 a year. Give it to these wealthy individuals. But we want an alternate fuel source. That's what the people want. And we've been
mhm,
asking for it for a very long time. And we want it. So are we gonna get it done? Regardless of the consequences, regardless of, who's gonna lose money or what's gonna happen. It's what we want. And that's what needs to happen because you can go jogging out on the streets, but every car pulls, sheds, a cup and a half of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
mhm,
And you're jogging in traffic. What are you doing? So we got to get rid of it. We got to get rid of it, and not completely because you're going to need oil to a certain extent.
yeah,
But things like that, those changes are big, massive changes that need to happen in this generation, and at least to get started. And you look at countries like China. China has 60% electric vehicle,
mhm,
60%. Yeah, our percentage is like less than 2%.
yeah,
Okay, they don't have, they don't have oil there, but and probably that's why they're doing it. But hey, let's do something. Electric is not 100%, but there's other sources of fuel that
yeah.
we can.
And the words "kicking and screaming" come to mind. Um, when it comes to these oil companies and these automobile manufacturers. And not too long ago, the auto industry was on life support, needing a government bailout to even stay
Yeah.
afloat. And yeah, they paid back the loans and all that, but without those loans, those very emergency um, infusion loans, there wouldn't be the Fords and GMs in the U.S. anymore.
Right. Right.
Um, but going back to you talked about the power that people have and whether they are scared or afraid to wield it. I always say that, and you talked about this earlier about the power of
Right.
local starting smaller and the people level. I always say that the power starts with the people and the local state elections, local community elections, building up from there. Because you'll find out who people are locally. And then when they run for city council or state rep, you know who these people are, you know the quality of them, talk about your word integrity. You'll know this at that point. In order to get to this part where we're kind of cycling up our representatives and our senators, how do we transform this? How do we get to the part where thinking about not electing any incumbent that starts up
Mhm.
here, but we also got to have a factory, if you will, for lack of a better word, of
Right.
good quality integrity having people who can
Mhm.
flow through the ranks up to the federal level and do what's best for everyone below. How do we do that?
Yeah, we gotta keep an eye on everybody and know everybody's history and
Mm,
their actions and how they behave, and it's just mind-boggling to me how you can have we had there was a senator, I don't remember, it's a congressman or senator back in the 80s, 90s, was doing they caught him doing crack cocaine and stuff like that, and he
Marion
got
Barry?
reelected.
I think it was Marion Barry.
Yeah, I think so, and I'm like, "What is this?" You know?
Hmm.
You have to keep an eye on these people and everything they do, uh, and, uh, and criticize it and have a way to remove them if
Mm,
they, are not representing us the way they're supposed to, and, hopefully newer incumbents will come with not just new ideas, but,
mm,
uh, a new sense of, uh worth, a new sense of self-respect
yeah,
where, um, they think more about the people than themselves. And I think we'll get there, but it takes courage, and a lot of people are not willing to stand up to this old system or the status quo. And once they get in there, they get um, dragged into things that they shouldn't have,
yeah,
shouldn't do. I'm here in Miami, Florida, and the school superintendent here was Alberto Carvalho, and
mm,
he moved to LA, so he got a job in LA. He was wonderful here, wonderful, wonderful. And I met him. I even did a little bit of work for him, and now he's in big trouble over there in LA. And he was a stand-up guy. He was
yeah,
very, very stand-up guy, and I am still trying to figure out what happened because
yeah,
I couldn't believe it myself. And once you get to that position of power and that you have the power and the control, and you see so much money changing hands,
hmm,
that can change you. That can change anybody, and we just gotta be on top of it all the time. Maybe we can have some type of organization or something that can be right on top of, without any of the
partisan stuff,
yeah,
and yeah. What they say,
but
I mean, the saying goes, "Power corrupts powerfully," and as
yeah,
you flow through these minefields, that is the federal and state and just general government, um, your integrity is, I'm assuming, is checked and tested every single day, and
yeah,
so it's kind of like if you remember the Batman series, Dark Knight. I think it was the
mhm,
one where the character Two Face, who became Two Face,
right,
the
right,
Joker's real mission was to see and test Two Face. I forget his character's name by the moment, but um, taking their best and challenging their integrity, challenging who they are.
Right.
And of course, Lois Lane gets killed. I'm sorry for spoiling it for anybody who hasn't seen this movie that's been out 10 years now. But
Okay.
um, that scene and that trauma caused him to become Two-Face, which compromises integrity. And so even the best get challenged every single day. And the idea is that some can hold up and some simply
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
And to
Was
your
one
point about
yeah,
watchdog groups or someone to check them, fact check, or not fact check them, but check their conduct. That's kind of what the people are, right? That's their role,
right.
whether we want their role or not.
That
That's
that
our responsibility.
myself, going through transformation myself and understanding myself better is to create those roots, those spiritual roots that
Hmm.
guide you and and keep you strong when you're being tested. And then you look at our founding fathers, which I love to read their history and understand how these people thought. Their principles were deeply rooted. These people would not budge, and they were willing to risk their lives for it. And and that's what we need. And uh, it's happening. It's happening it's not in government itself, but to the people where we are understanding, are so aware of what's going on in the system today that we realize we need to create this change. But
Hmm.
to go back to one of your questions about why we haven't really organized anything or done anything is we don't really have a clear plan on how to do it. So you're risking our livelihood. You're risking the way that we're used to living our lives. So if we're going to do something, we better have a plan, and we better have competent individuals putting this plan together on how the transformation is going to happen, the actual reformation of the government and institution. How is that going to happen? Who are going to be the role players, the key role players in doing this? What are the ideas that we want? We need to poll the people and see exactly what it is that the people want, because it's not about what I want or what you want. We might have some great ideas, but ultimately is what the people of the United States want this country to become.
Hmm.
So we need that plan, a clear and structural and precise plan that lays out how everything is going to happen, and then we can follow it. But without it, people are not going to support anything, because it's just going to be all out chaos. And you might not like the government, but I'd rather have this government than the people that you know ran into the Capitol building
Yeah.
and went in there and they're like savages. You want people like that running the government.
Hmm.
So
Well, some
you
would
need
say we
to.
kind of have that now.
It might be even worse. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's just. I mean, I'm doing this out of my own like necessity,
Hmm.
because I can't live with myself knowing that there's something I can do and not do it, and realizing that it would be the greatest sin that I could ever commit towards myself, towards this nation, and towards God. And
Hmm.
really the only unforgivable sin to be given, some knowledge or wisdom or understanding and not share it with the world. And for a long time, I try to suppress it, because fear or because of lack of self worth or whatever. But
Understanding.
I said to myself, listen, I'm 60 years old now. I said, whatever I'm going to do in my life, I got to do it now,
Hmm.
because I want to die in peace with myself. So, I'm trying to do this like that's it. This is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. Whether people listen or they don't listen, it doesn't matter, as long
Hmm.
as I'm out here talking to you and sharing the ideas, and that I believe God brought It's bringing out through me. You know, it's not just something that I'm saying because I want to, you know, become famous or whatever. No, it's it plagues me. It bothers me. I need to
Yeah.
talk about it. I need to do something about it. And um, I think a lot of people feel the same way,
Hmm.
where the little voice in your head is not going to go away until you actually commit yourself to doing the things that you were born to do.
And talking about your why, because that's kind of where you just went there. But talk about why you call yourself the Paraclete, and what. First of all, what does that word mean for those who don't know? But
Yeah.
what does that identity mean to you?
The Paraclete is a it's a phrase on it's a word in the Bible, and it means the spirit of wisdom. It means an advocate for humanity, a helper, well, an advocate for God, a helper to humanity, and it's another word for the Holy Spirit.
Hmm.
And I've had my experiences, religious experiences or spiritual experiences, whatever you want to call it, where it made me realize that that's who I am. Ever since I was a little kid, and I put it in the book where, if you want, I can explain to you my experience, what happened, when I was a kid, when I was 12 years old.
Well, my next
But
question was actually going to be about your book, so you can feel free to bridge that to the next question as
yeah,
well.
it was during my first communion where, I grew up Catholic and at very strict Catholic schools all throughout my life, pretty much. And the first communion, they would drill us on what it meant to have, the body of Christ, and uh, uh, to be able to, receive that gift, and how His Holy Spirit was going to fill us with wisdom. And as we were there, and this was back in the DR, which is where I was born, and
Okay.
I had a very peculiar experience where, after receiving the Eucharist, I not only felt, but I saw an entity floating around the stadium. And I was a little kid, and I see this entity, like the nuns had told us, the Holy Spirit's going to enter your body. And I don't know if it was a little kid, imagination or what it was, but it looked like, in the movie The Predator,
Hmm.
when it cloaks itself, and it was
Yeah.
going around the room on the heads of the kids. And I closed my eyes. I said, "Enter me. I want you to enter me. I'm the one you're looking for." And I felt it, and I felt it. I felt it deep. And I was, now that I think back on it, I said, you were a foolish kid. You were so stupid." Because, to be close to the light is also to have a very dark shadow.
Mm.
And it's disturbing. So I had to deal with all of that in my life, and realize that, there's a lot of light inside of me as well. So a lot of people see me and talk to me. They see me as super friendly, super nice guy, super whatever, but my shadow is very dark,
Mm.
and I'm afraid of it, to the point. So it came from there. And I realized that just recently, going back through my history, my childhood, everything that's happened to me, since I was a child, and how my life has progressed, and how the signs have been around in my life, directing me and showing me, "Hey, you're in the right track. You're doing the right thing. And I see it every day." And I think, Carl Jung. I talk a lot about Carl Jung. He called it synchronicities, where life shows you. It's like where you see, like Jesus says, the kingdom of God is spread upon the earth, and people don't see it. Well, once in a while, you get a glimpse of it. And when you get a glimpse of it, you realize, hey, I'm doing the right thing. I'm in the right place. And doing what I'm supposed to do. So it gives you a lot of comfort, and it helps you guide your life.
Yeah.
So, and it might be small little things, just yeah. To give you an example, I work on windows and doors. Working on a door for like 2 hours, couldn't fix it. I put everything down. I said, God, give me a hand. I can't do this, and I've been doing this for 30 years. Take a little break, turn the screw half a quarter inch, and it's fixed. I'm like, I couldn't have done this. I mean, I've been on this door for 2 hours, with the sun beating on me, and the door just practically fixed itself. So even little things that
Hmm.
happen to you on a daily basis, or once in a while, you can interpret it as a spiritual experience. So yeah,
And,
that's where the name comes from.
mhm.
And I
And
realized,
talk
well,
about your book too, the Modern Citizen, and how that brings all this full circle for the readers to transform their way of thinking.
well, it's like the spiritual evolution of humanity. So instead of looking at events that we have gone through in history, including Catholic, Christianity, and some of the ideas, I translate them into more of a realistic point of view of what really happened. So if you take an event like World War II, which was horrible,
Mm.
okay, and you look, well, okay, we know that there was a terrible physical experience that happened, and look at what human beings can do, and this and that. But what was the experience? Spiritual experience. What was God trying to teach us with this? Why did He release one of the most powerful demons from hell and let him loose upon the earth? Why? And it was to teach us something. It was to teach us solidarity, to teach us unity, to teach us that we can come together as a species together and fight these evil forces, the corruption and the greed and the hatred and the violence and the drug. We can do it. And that's what we got to learn, and what do we do? We created the United Nations, and then we pushed it aside and said, oh, no, we don't need this anymore. Let's start building some nuclear weapons.
Mhm.
That's going to be a lot more fun. And look
I
where
don't know
we
if
are
fun's the word
today.
I would describe, but yeah.
Look at where we are today. So much time spent, so much effort, so much money for what?
Mhm.
Is the world safer? What has nuclear weapons produced? Nothing. The United Nations wanted to abolish it, wanted to, and we said no. And here we are today. We could have been much more advanced than we are now,
Mhm.
and less poverty and less problems in the world. It's on the past, but we need to learn from it. And we
Yeah.
haven't, and that's a problem that we don't learn from our past mistakes. And if you go to apply the psychology of Carl Jung to this, he talks about the shadow, and it keeps coming back until you address it. So if you got a problem, it just keeps coming back and back and back, and it's not to hurt you; it's to let you understand, hey, you need to change your ways. You know, look what this has had doing to you. You got to change your ways. So
Yeah.
that's where we are as a species and as a country. And until we change, the problems are gonna continue, and they get stronger and stronger, and situation gets worse. And
Yeah, I'm
uh,
I'm
uh,
typically full of sayings. One is, those who fail to learn from their past are doomed to repeat it. I think we all know that saying and have heard that one
yeah, yeah,
dozens of times. But another
yeah,
one, speaking of doing better for humanity and not, looking at wars, things that are going on right now, all around this world. A wise man by the name of Tupac Shakur said, "They got money for wars, but can't feed the poor." Um,
exactly.
we always find money somehow. I don't know how. We're budget light and riding deficits and
They
and all
printed
types of
over
stuff.
here. They
Yeah,
printed.
just money just comes out of nowhere every time we need to go fight a war.
Well, it's not, and we're paying for it. The people are paying for it,
Yeah.
and that's a problem. And we are, in a global, you know, y- position, we are losing a lot of friends. We're
Hmm.
losing our dignity in the world, and unfortunately, I tend to agree with a lot of these countries. We're not the good guys anymore. We're
Yeah.
actually the bad guys. We're the ones pushing wars and talking, down to these nations and making them do what we want them to do for us, so we can become
Hmm.
more powerful and more rich. And it's a shame, and we're losing the support of a lot of nations. Just look at Canada. Canada just turned and said, "Hey, U.S. doesn't want to deal with us. We'll deal with China." And I think we're putting, the hangman's noose to our neck,
Hmm.
to our own neck. That's what we're doing, because by not respecting our allies and pressuring them, they're going to look somewhere else. And it's going to come a point where the world is not going to need the US anymore. It's not that we're going to collapse, but it's just that they're not going to need us anymore.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, hey, well, we don't want to deal with you anymore. We got the Chinese, they're helping us. And the Chinese they're actually have this plan in place,
Hmm.
and they're carrying it out because they're doing I don't know if you're aware of the Silk Road, or the road initiative that the leader of China. That's why he got elected, because he had this grand idea of spreading wealth throughout, Africa and the Middle East and Europe, and connecting everybody through ports and railways and everything else, so they can share more, um, so they can distribute their products more and share the
Yeah.
wealth. And they realize, hey, we fix this, economy, and we bring some prosperity to Africa. In a few years, they're going to need cars. They're going to need refrigerators. They're going to need, building materials. They're going to need stuff from us, and we're going to be able to provide it for them, sell it to them.
Yeah.
So it's in the best interest of the world, in the United States, to help other nations develop themselves and spread the prosperity around the world. It's going to be good for everybody. They're like, I don't know who it was that said that. I think it was Rockefeller or somebody that said that. The money is not evil. The absence of money is evil. When
Hmm.
you don't have money, that's when it's bad, and it
Yeah.
is. So when the whole world is prosperous, we're gonna you're not gonna have to worry about immigration. People, a lot of people that come here, they don't want to come here. They come here to work, or because they don't feel safe in their country.
Yeah.
But they'd rather live in their own country. They have their families there. They love their food, their culture, everything else. They just have no opportunities. So if you have countries that have the opportunities, they're not going to come here or anywhere else. And that's some of the vision that people have had, including this guy Elon Musk. He's like, there shouldn't be any borders in the world. Well, how do you do that? Well, when the world is prosperous and everybody's fairly wealthy, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And you can travel anywhere you want to go, or you want to live wherever you want to live. And that's the future of humanity. And that's the divine plan for humanity. That's what God wants us to become. And we know it.
One
And
world.
we just got to make it happen.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm listen. I'm a fan of one humanity where neighbors care about neighbors, whether they're next door, the next city, next state, next country. Um, and we're not constantly in a cycle of war after war after war after war, and
Yeah.
just it's become desensitized. The amount of lives are
Yeah.
lost fighting
Yeah.
these wars and going after oil and going after regimes and trying to
Kids
control
and
the
these
young
kids.
girls that were killed in Iran 2 weeks ago, or
It's
almost two
not
weeks
the
ago.
first time. It's happened so much. And
Yeah.
it's so sad. And how can you blame these people if they want us dead?
Hmm.
When we go over there and kills, if somebody kills my kids, man, oh, they can go after them, with
Yeah.
everything I got. It's like, you got to realize that, like what Jesus said, you got to love your enemies too. So you got to understand their position. It's You got to understand where they're coming from. Like before the United States got involved in the Middle East, that place was fairly peaceful. I mean, they used to have their differences and everything else, but terrorism, this ISIS, Hezbollah, everything, we created them
Hmm.
out of the hatred that we poured into that place. And then we say, well, they're so bad, they're so bad. Well, look at all the violence that we have, you know, poured
Perpetrated.
into
Yeah.
those nations. Come on, they're gonna hate us. Of course, they're gonna hate us,
Hmm.
and they want us dead. Put yourself in their place when you have your whole family killed. You're like,
Yeah.
these imperialists want to rule the world.
Hmm.
You gotta stop them, and that's the way it is. And we need to look deeper into what America really, what it means, and what our purpose is, what our divine purpose is, so that
Yeah.
we can change.
And what it should be going forward. I mean, we obviously need to
Yeah.
change. We need to shift directions, whether it's a complete 180 or just an angled approach to something better than it is now. Dave's Ed Podcast is now part of the Alive Podcast Network, the home of Black voices, where community, culture, and creatives live. Dave's Ed Podcast adds to the vast catalog of titles available on the Alive Podcast Network app on iOS and Android. Check out Dave's Ed Podcast and many others on the Alive Podcast Network app, the home of Black voices. So that's the end of the Q&A segment, and now I want to move
Nope.
into the my favorite segment with my guests called First Thoughts. And First Thoughts, Alan, or I'll call you AKA Paraclete.
Okay.
The way that works is I offer you a word or a phrase to get your first thoughts for those tuning in for the first time. Like I always say, I'm happy you're here.
Mhm.
Shame you tuning in for the first time, but I'm happy you're here. Um,
Okay.
Obviously, you're not familiar with these words or phrases because that would ruin
No,
the
no,
whole
no. This is
notion.
a psychological test now you're gonna do on me here.
Yeah, it frightens some, but some people are ready for it and happy and excited for it. So
Okay.
I'll give you the first thought. Revolution. If I said that to you, what's your first thought?
Peaceful.
Okay. And you
Peace,
can feel free to elaborate a
just
little bit if you want to.
a peaceful revolution. That's the only
Hmm.
way. Through our economic means, we can change the world, can change America. We have the power. The
Hmm.
people have the power. It's not just a saying. We have more money and more power than all the billionaires combined, and all the people in the government. We have more power and more money
Hmm.
than all of them combined.
Yeah.
So if we want to do this, we can do it.
Okay. Next first thought, another R word, responsibility. What's your first thought?
Responsibility towards yourself, towards God, and towards your nation. So, you know, you can't get away without it. It's unfortunately, I would rather be fishing than doing any of this stuff. But I
Hmm.
realize that I have responsibilities towards myself and towards humanity, towards my fellow human beings. So I can't. You can't become fully conscious or aware of your existence unless you know that you have this responsibility towards the
Hmm.
planet as well.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, last first thought, and I like this one. I like this because of the conversation we've had, and I chose this first thought before we had this conversation, but I think it's so
Okay.
fitting for what we've talked about. Awakening. What's your first thought?
And if you want to understand that process, you got to go through what Carl Jung called individuation. It is a process of becoming your full, whole, complete self to become, like the title of my book, a modern citizen. So a modern citizen is a person that is conscious of their existence, fully conscious of their existence. And he explained it as being at the edge of the abyss, with the future, the abyss of the future before us, and the history of humanity that disappears in primeval mists. So you encompass everything from the beginning of humanity. Everything is in your DNA through your genes from the beginning of human existence up to now. It's all there. You don't even need to go to books to understand it. And we have an abyss in the future before us. So that abyss, we got to cross it, and it takes a leap of faith to 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 be full, aware and conscious, and it's not easy. But if you go through the process of individuation, which is the process that Jesus went through in his life, you will become aware and awake of your surroundings. And I think I think Young should have been in the Bible. Carl Jung should have been in the Bible because he actually, you know, showed us what was going on in the psychology of Jesus. Because for me to
Yeah.
believe that Jesus was the Son of God, if I believe in Jesus, I'm going to be saved, and that's not enough for me. That was never enough for me. I wanted to understand what he went through, in his psychology. Did he have any doubts and fears? And he did, and because he was human as well, and he found the divine within him. So that is the process. And I did put another experience in the book where I have my, like, when you go through this process of individuation, which Carl Jung called it, like those self realization, self actualization. You reach a place where you discover the self, and the self is like the God within. So when you discover that, you have an endless amount of energy or a
Right.
source that you can go to to understand yourself and what's going on in the world and why everything is happening, because everything is happening for a reason. All this, chaos and confusion and problems that we're having, and everything else is a process. It's to wake us
Mhm.
up,
Yeah.
to make us
BS.
realize,
You
hey,
can
we
call
can't
it BS.
doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, stop doing this, and
Yeah.
look. And then, and I had my experience with that in the self, and it was just a lot of love and wisdom that
Mhm.
was just pouring in this consciousness. It was like a sphere that I saw. I think I was, because I had a procedure done in surgery, and I think I was in one of those recuperating rooms or something, and I had that experience where I saw this consciousness in the universe, in the center of the universe. And it was just pouring into me love and wisdom.
Mhm.
And it was like explaining to me without any, um, completely clear what is going on and why things are happening and what needs to be done. And everything was clear, which it's not the first time it's happened to me, because when my father passed away, I also had a lot of questions, and everything was answered to me, and guidance was provided for me. So I'm pretty confident that, you know, like our founding fathers believe, if we really want this divine providence to help us, it will,
Mhm.
and once more. So yeah,
Gotcha. Okay. No,
I
that's a
don't
great answer.
I don't know if that helps you.
No, no, it does. And I'm a spiritual, not religious person, but I understand a lot of the concepts. Plus, I grew up as a Baptist Christian way, way, way back when. I
Yeah.
always say I didn't have a choice. It was grandma or mom taking me to church, and I was going. There was
Oh
no
yeah. Oh yeah.
negotiation. But
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the end of First Thoughts, and I want to do one more thing, something I started 2 seasons ago called TO First Thoughts, and it's a nod to my fiance who lovingly call each other TO, but it's an opportunity for my guests to throw a first thought back at me. So, Alan, if you had a first thought you wanted to throw at me, what would it be?
I want to know what's in your head.
Right
I want
now,
to know what you think about, not what's happening in America, but is this possible? How are we going to achieve this transformation? How can we um, become a better nation?
Mhm.
That's what I want to know
I
from
really
you.
think the way we do that is the first word that I gave you, revolution. I think it comes in the form of multiple things, but most importantly, like I said, I'm a big proponent of every incumbent evicted, um, regardless of if you do everything you say or you do nothing you say, I think you're a part of the problem right now, whether you're actively a part of it or complicitly a part of it. And I think the caveat with that, right, is something you brought up, which is we can get everybody out and bring all new people in who may just be better at doing the things that the people we got out were doing that we didn't like. And so it's got to come with checks and balances that actually work, checks and balances that are actually checked, accountability that's real time, not just, we won't vote for you next time, but we'll actually evict you today or tomorrow. It's got to come with system gatekeeping and stopgaps that protect us every single day, 24 hours a day, to at first force compliance with humanity, but over time just become a natural thing that people will do the right thing, not because they're afraid of consequences or losing their positions or getting voted out or impeached, whatever, but because they just actually want to do the right thing. And I think it's going to start with the painful process of getting everyone out and the painful process of holding people accountable and evicting them and all that stuff. And hopefully over time, it'll just become part of the norm, as I said, where people are just doing the right things because they know they should do the right things. Um, Capitalism, I know we talked about that a little bit. We also got to look at how we manage capitalism. Capitalism in itself is not a terrible thing. It's just that there are so many quote unquote loopholes or possibilities for people to misuse and abuse capitalism solely for the purpose of either maintaining power or advantage or finances or whatever. And
Right.
so figuring out ways to incentivize is the word that comes to my mind, but it's not the word I want to say. I don't think we need to incentivize doing the right things. And I don't think we need to instill fear in order to get people to do the right things either. But just providing the opportunity to see the positives and simply doing the right thing, not just as a human, but even for your business in the spirit of capitalism.
Right.
Um, and I think if all this gets balled into one big old aluminum foil ball that we call America or the United States, it will make things better. But it's honestly, I think revolution is going to start very painfully and hopefully level set to what becomes just normal for everyone doing the right
Right.
thing.
Right. I agree. I agree. But like I said, that revolution needs to be peaceful,
Yeah.
and we can do that, and we have the power.
Hmm.
We have the money, and some of the wealthy individuals that don't want to join the movement, they say, "Well, no, hell with you. I worked hard all my life. I have all this money. I'm making all this money. I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to help society." Well, we got to turn our backs to them.
Hmm.
And to put an example would be a football team. You know, we want you to donate 20% of your profits. We want you to donate 30% of the profit, not to these, institutions that you set up to funnel the money into your friends or fake, like almost fake uh, institutions. Nonprofit institutions.
Shell companies. Yeah.
Directly, we want you directly to help the people. I live here in Miami. You got Miami Gardens right next to the stadium. You got an old lady there that's been working 70 years. She hasn't been able to retire. She's putting her
Mm,
kid, puts her kids to school. She's taking care of her grandkids. She's got to work still. Help her out, man. Pay her freaking house. Buy her a car. I know a kid that goes, to school with my son. He's a mathematical genius. He doesn't have a car. He's got to take a bus to school, 2.5
mm,
hours. One way, 2.5 hours the other way. So you gotta help the people in your communities. And if you
yeah.
don't, we're gonna stop going to the games. We're gonna turn off the TV. And that goes to the players too.
Yeah.
So that's what we demand. That's what we want. We want accountability. We want social awareness that you can help your community, and that's gonna make these owners and these individuals, like they're gonna be our heroes. They're
Hmm.
gonna be people that we
Yeah,
can
we hope
really
so.
admire. And I think that's what they want ultimately. Not for people to be judging and criticizing them because of their wealth, but to realize, man, you're helping us solve the
Hmm.
problems of society, and that's how we would join together and get things done. But for the people that don't want to help, then we got to turn our backs
Yeah.
and just not support them. We can live without a. You think the world's gonna end if Amazon goes bankrupt? It's not gonna end. Somebody else is gonna take their place, and we'll support them if they're doing the right thing. So we
Hmm.
got to be able to make these sacrifices.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
absolutely agree.
agree with you. I agree with you. This revolution is it's on its way. It's in our minds right now, but eventually it's going to come to actual action.
Yeah, the phrase was coined for a much different reason, but I'm gonna say it here anyway, even if it's not relatable. But the revolution will not be televised. Comes to mind. Um,
No,
yeah, but Alan, I do thank you for stepping into Dave's head, and as I always do, before I let my guests go, if there's anything you want to promote before you go, feel free to do so now.
oh, just my book, The Modern Citizen, the spiritual evolution of humanity and how to create a better world. It's in on Amazon, KDP, and it's in Spanish and English. So if you're Spanish speaking and watching the podcast, it's also in Spanish. But I did that mostly for my family because some of them are back in the DR.
Hmm.
They wanted to read the book. But and also in Miami, they have a lot Latin, individuals that might want to read in Spanish. But with AI, is such a great tool
Yeah,
to get these things done. But yeah, and my email is the Paraclete9 gmail.com. And if you want to ask me any questions, you can go there and shoot me an email.
all right.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for stepping Dave's head. And as I've said for a little over a season now to all my guests who come on, may every today be the best day of your life.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Same to you, my friend. I
Absolutely.
consider you a friend today.
Appreciate it.
All right.
My favorite segment of my podcast is My Grin, which stands for Great Reason to Be in Love with Now. The week this episode is dropping is a week long celebration of my chapter, the Lambda Delta Sigma chapter of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated's chapter anniversary. 26 years of impact. Now, Lambda Delta Sigma was chartered back on March 24th of 2000. And so that makes for 26 years of service, leadership, and community impact. Being that my doorway, my gateway to Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, which I've talked about many times on this podcast over the years, those who follow understand the passion and investment I have in my fraternity, the roles I serve currently and perhaps aspire to. And so my great reason to be in love with now should not be surprising to those who understand this time period of the year. Organizations within the Divine Nine have historically shaped communities through service, advocacy, and leadership for generations. Figures in Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, like the late Honorable Congressman John Lewis, wide receiver Jerry Rice, actor Blair Underwood, even astronaut Victor Glover, who I believe in the next month will be starting the journey to go around Mars, or not Mars, the moon. But that's just a sampling of the members we have in our fraternity who have demonstrated global impact of service driven leadership, creativity, morale, and so much more. I have a tremendous pride in brotherhood and service. Those who know me personally, intimately, know my affinity for giving back, paying it forward, not just to community as a whole, but specifically youth and just really anyone who I can lend a hand to. even the services I provide in my personal businesses, um, many times I do so at a discounted rate for those within the organizations that I support. And I do that not because I'm seeking to get out of the business or anything like that. I do that because there's a connection there that through the organization, through those people individually as people, I don't see a reason to, as they say, break them overhead with pricing. And yes, I'm a big proponent of getting paid for what you are doing, getting paid your worth, as they say. But sometimes you can give a discount. That's just the way I believe. Being part of a chapter and a fraternity that actively contributes to community reinforces purpose, pride, responsibility. I go further and say leadership. But there's service beyond this affiliation, the blue and white affiliation. While fraternity life and sorority life are sisters of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, whilst fraternity sorority life is impactful, absolutely is impactful. Everyone has the ability to serve and uplift their communities in meaningful ways while not being a part of a fraternity or sorority. Now, I will say, if you are interested in Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, especially in the Delaware area, which is where I am, feel free to reach out through the podcast, and I'll put you in touch with those who can get the process started. And I would say that around the world, if you're interested, reach out. But while we celebrate Lambda Delta Sigma chapter, and while 26 years is an amazing feat, and wow, just thinking back to the 20th celebration, I sat in a role of chapter president, and we were set to celebrate our 20th charter anniversary. And the date that we chose was the weekend that COVID kind of became newsworthy, right before lockdowns. And I remember the committee and I met, I think we were Wednesday, maybe, might have been Tuesday, but I think it was around Wednesday. The event celebration gala was supposed to be Saturday. And the type of leader I am, I 100% invite input. Famously, my letter that I sent on my last unofficial day at my current company, one of the things I noted in there was that my management style or leadership style is that we're all in this together. We're all in the same team. I just happen to have a title. That's the way I operate, and that's what I truly believe. In order to get the most out of those who are under your charge, they can't look at you as just simply a giver of orders, a snapper of the switch, a point in the direction type of person. They have to look at you as someone they consider family, who they respect because of your role and they follow because of your role, but they follow you more so because of the person that you are and the leadership style that you carry. Went off on a tangent there for a second, but was telling a story about COVID, and I served in the role as president of the chapter at that point, had a meeting with the committee, and I opened it up to a vote. Do we still want to have this, or do we want to take that risk, or do we want to cancel this out of a preponderance of caution? There are varying ages of those who will be attending, some elderly, some may be sick. You don't want to expose people and be responsible for someone who may succumb to COVID. And this is before we knew the full extent of what it was going to be. And I'll never forget, the vote came down to a tie on the committee, 100% a tie, which meant that I took ownership of the vote to be the tie-breaking person because I was not included in the original vote. I let the rest of the committee cast their vote, and I made the unilateral decision based on that tie to cancel our gala. And I'm going back and forth. I don't really do regrets, but I'm going back and forth thinking about whether that was preemptive, whether we would have squeaked by with everyone being okay, the ramifications financially to what that meant, the difficulty that we experienced in trying to work through the situation as just simple human beings with the hotel that we were having the gala, and their reluctance to understand the situation, not only from a contractual perspective, not only from a financial perspective, but even down to what would happen with the food that was already purchased and in house. And I remember sitting at the board table at this hotel, the boardroom table, and having this back and forth discussion with hotel staff. And I'm not going to put the hotel out there. And actually, the hotel went out of business not long after that. And when I tell the rest of the story, it'll become ironic what they are now. Um, that building is now. But having this conversation around the hotel boardroom table, and finally saying, "Listen, you guys are not going to allow us to cancel. Cool, without penalty. Um, you guys are not going to refund any type of money at all. Cool. You got the food, but you're not going to throw it away. You're going to actually try to sell it. So now you're going to double dip off the food that you got for our event. Okay, we can't force you to do anything, but could you at least take the food that we're paying for, apparently, and just give it to a homeless shelter?" And they refused to do that as well. And I remember not being frustrated about the inflexibility with the contract and the cancellation, the fact that there's a worldwide pandemic, which we did not know at that time the scale, but they refused to cancel without penalty because the governor of the state had not officially declared an emergency yet, although it would happen days later. And so I remember being frustrated, not because they were inflexible with regards to the penalty, and they're not inflexible with regards to the way they were going to cancel the contract for the event, but just because they would not take the food and give it to a homeless shelter or allow us to even give it to the homeless shelter. They refused to do that. And I thought it was such a shady, inhumane thing to do because there was an opportunity to take a bad situation that we didn't even know was going to get way worse and turn it into something positive, to just give a ton of food to a homeless shelter who would probably need it more so than ever, especially for what was to come. The ironic thing that I previewed before, the ironic thing is once they went out of business, the building turned into a homeless facility, so to speak, a treatment care facility for homeless people. And so when I realized that happened one day when I drove by it, the smile that beamed on my face as a result of that sheer irony was palpable. I mean, if you know the little cartoon thing where it goes ding, you see the little bright light. That's what happened to me when I drove by that building and saw that not only they were shut down or closed down, um, but it became a homeless refuge. So I went off on a tangent there. I want to talk about impacting your community, and I say this that you don't have to go through a fraternity sorority. You can find ways to do so, impacting your community. And I want to give you just 5 ways you can do it. Speaking of shelter, volunteer at a local shelter or a food bank. It's something my chapter does every year or just about every year. Something outside of the chapter that I do as well. And so volunteering at a local shelter, food bank, even if it's just simply giving to a shelter, donating to a shelter. And that's more so what I was talking about, my personal that I do every year. Second thing, organize or participate in a neighborhood cleanup. Now, again, from a chapter perspective, we do adopt a highway. You can walk around your neighborhood, organize your neighbors to clean up trash. I don't know about you and where you are listening to this. Thank you again for tuning in. But it's been crazy windy on the northeast part of the United States. And so if you're like my neighborhood, you see a clean neighborhood one day and just trash everywhere the next day because the winds have been like EF0 and slightly below for a while now. So organize and participate in neighborhood cleanup. The third thing, mentor a student or young professional. Probably my favorite of the 5, just because I'm passionate about paying it forward and lifting up students and youth as someone and some people, I talked about my mentors a couple of times on this podcast, did for me. And so if you can join a big brother, big sister, or if you can go through another organization that has youth mentoring programs, alumni at your college or university, a lot of times they have mentoring programs that you can sign up to participate in and help. Youth doesn't mean just, 5, 6, 7, 10-year-olds. It could be young adults as well. So sign up, mentor a student or young professional. Number 4, support local small businesses. Take a day, walk through the neighborhood, say hi to people, people watch, stop in the local stores and small businesses and patronize something small, or just say hi and find out who people are. You never know what type of relationships can be formed, and you never know how those relationships can be useful down the line or mutually useful going forward. So take a second. Nice warm days are coming. Thank goodness. Go walk around the town. And lastly, engage in community forums or local initiatives. And these could be political, they could be neighborhood watch, they could be, if you're in a gated community or something like that, you can have your local community groups that they have. It doesn't have to be in person. There's a lot of online community groups that exist out there. It's a way to get to know your neighbors. It's a way to get to know the neighborhood. It's a way to engage and be present outside of your couch. Please get off the couch. So those 5 things you can do that don't involve a fraternity or sorority: volunteer at a local shelter or food bank, organize or participate in a neighborhood cleanup, mentor a student or young professional, support local small businesses, and or, I say and or because all 5 you can do, engage in community forums or local initiatives. I want to thank Alan, aka the Paraclete, for stepping into Dave's head. Check out his book, The Modern Citizen: The Spiritual Evolution of Humanity and How to Create a Better World. You can find that on Amazon. And if you want to get in touch with him, email him at theparaclete9@gmail.com. Lastly, as I always do, I like to end an episode with a quote. I think it's appropriate with what I just talked about in this my chapter celebrating 26 years as a chapter, our charter anniversary, and the impacts we can have on the community, impacts we have had, the impacts we continue to have, and the impacts we will have going forward for decades and decades, hopefully, to come. There's a lesson in paying it forward and giving back and making sure that you're in the community, but you're also a part of the community. And that when you have an opportunity, as we try to do, the story I told about the COVID gala that almost was, even in those negative situations, trying to give that food to the shelter or food bank. Don't lose who you are because of situations that honestly are out of control. COVID was out of control. The hotel's reaction and response was out of our control. And so what we tried to do was a statement to the character of not only myself, and I'm not giving myself a pat on the back, but I'm saying in that moment, the committee as a whole, and I happen to be a part of that committee. And so it's fitting, I think, this quote from Alpha, as an Alpha Phi Alpha member of the D9 organizations, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the quote is, "The time is always right to do what is right." The story I told is a testimony to that. Can't cancel, can't get our money back, can't. Could we at least try to do this? Trying to do something right. Now, granted, it wasn't allowed, but the effort was there. The time is always right to do something or do what is right. Even in the face of a global pandemic that we did not know was coming, rather than waste it, there are people who can use it. And so, regardless of what situations are, whatever's going on in your life, your daily, take time to do what is right regardless. Thank you for stepping into Dave's head. Until next time, Make sure to get your daily dose of perspective and always be the tone setter in your life. That's all for this episode of Dave's Head. If you enjoyed this episode, I'm sure you'll love similar content in the Alive Podcast Network app. Plus, you can support this podcast and enjoy ad-free listening to nearly 100 other Black-hosted podcasts. Download the iOS or Android app, become a member, and experience unlimited access to Black-hosted content week after week. Follow, like, and or subscribe to this podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and or X at Dave's Head Pod, and on YouTube at Dave's Head Podcast. For more information and links to all things Dave's Head, check out our website at daveshead.card.co. Episodes premiere on the second and fourth Fridays of the month. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, enjoy life because life should be fun. Take care.